Prince Leopold, Duke of Albany, was a unique figure within the 19th century British royal family. As the eighth son of Queen Victoria and Prince Albert, his life was marked by the duality between his privileged lineage and the fragility imposed by hemophilia, a hereditary disease that conditioned every aspect of his existence. Despite the restrictions imposed by his health and his mother's overprotectiveness, Leopold stood out for his intellect, his love for the arts, and his deep interest in state affairs. His time at the University of Oxford, his commitment to literature, and his involvement in colonial administration demonstrated that his life transcended the image of a sickly prince. Honored with the title of Duke of Albany and eventually married to Princess Helena of Waldeck and Pyrmont, Leopold lived with a spirit of perseverance, leaving behind a legacy that still resonates in British royal history. Before we delve deeper, we invite you to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our videos. Without further ado, let's begin. On April 7, 1853, Buckingham Palace witnessed the birth of Prince Leopold, the eighth offspring of Queen Victoria and Prince Albert. As a member of the British royal family, his arrival was marked by the pomp and expectation that accompanied any new addition to the House of Hanover. From the very beginning, his birth was celebrated with joy at court and in political circles, as he represented the consolidation of the Queen's lineage in a Europe where family ties between monarchies defined international relations. However, what was initially seen as just another birth within the large royal family would soon prove to be an event of great significance in the medical and dynastic history of the United Kingdom. In the months following his birth, as was customary in the British royal family, Leopold was presented before God in a solemn christening ceremony. This religious act took place in the private chapel of Buckingham Palace, a site reserved for events of special importance within the royal family. Presided over by the Archbishop of Canterbury, the ceremony was attended by notable figures of the nobility and close associates of the court, who served as the infant's godparents. His full name, Leopold George Duncan Albert, was chosen in honor of various royal figures, particularly King Leopold I of Belgium, the prince's maternal uncle, whom Queen Victoria held in high regard. With this baptism, the young prince was officially integrated into the Church of England and the traditions that governed the British monarchy. However, as his early years progressed, it became evident that Leopold was not an ordinary child within the royal family. From an early age, clear signs of a debilitating disease set him apart from his siblings. It was hemophilia, a genetic disorder affecting blood clotting, which at the time represented a life sentence of fragility and constant risk. This hereditary condition, passed down from his mother, Queen Victoria, condemned him to precarious health and constant restrictions in his physical development. Spontaneous bleeding and difficulties recovering from minor injuries became a recurring problem, causing great concern among the royal family and the doctors responsible for his well-being. His diagnosis had profound repercussions on his personal life, making him one of the first documented cases of hemophilia in European royalty, giving rise to what would later be known as the royal disease. Faced with this medical reality, Queen Victoria adopted an extremely protective attitude toward her son, severely limiting his activities and restricting any physical exertion that might compromise his fragile health. The relationship between mother and son was marked by the Queen's constant concern, as she saw Leopold as a vulnerable being who needed to be shielded from any danger. Unlike his siblings, who were allowed to pursue military careers or actively participate in politics, Leopold was treated with extreme delicacy. Though well-intentioned, this level of overprotection led to feelings of frustration and a longing for greater independence, something he would later seek to achieve through his academic life and intellectual pursuits. Despite the physical restrictions imposed by his mother and his fragile health, Leopold had access to a first-class education. Following the tradition of the royal family, his early instruction took place at home under the guidance of distinguished tutors who taught him humanities, classical languages, and sciences. However, his intellect soon proved to be above average, and his love for learning led him to excel in various fields of knowledge. Against the Queen's concerns, Leopold enrolled at the University of Oxford, where he found a space for intellectual growth and personal development. At Oxford, the prince immersed himself in the study of literature, history, and philosophy, areas in which he displayed exceptional talent. Moreover, he established relationships with influential scholars and thinkers of the time, who encouraged him to cultivate his intellect and overcome the limitations imposed by his physical condition. His time at this institution not only shaped him as a man of letters but also gave him a sense of identity beyond maternal control, something he had longed for since childhood. From an early age, Prince Leopold showed a genuine interest in the intellectual and cultural world, which led him to develop a deep passion for music, art, and science. Despite the physical limitations imposed by his disease, his inquisitive mind made him an avid scholar and promoter of the arts. His stay at the University of Oxford cemented his love for literature and encouraged him to actively engage in academic and intellectual circles. In recognition of his erudition and commitment to the dissemination of knowledge, he was appointed president of the Royal Society of Literature, a highly prestigious position within Britain's literary community. In 1880, he traveled to Canada, a strategically important British colony within the empire. This journey was a unique opportunity for the prince, who found in the colonial system a fertile ground for study and reflection. During his stay, Leopold had the chance to engage in discussions with governors, officials, and prominent members of Canadian society, observing firsthand the challenges and opportunities faced by British colonies abroad. His curiosity led him to participate in debates on governance, justice administration, and the region's economic development. This experience strengthened his conviction regarding the need for more efficient and equitable government in British-controlled territories. Upon returning to England, Leopold advocated for greater attention to the needs of the colonies, demonstrating that his interest in state affairs extended beyond his merely symbolic role within the monarchy. Aware of the need to grant him a formal status within the nobility's hierarchy, in 1881, Queen Victoria bestowed upon him the title of Duke of Albany, in addition to granting him the titles of Earl of Clarence and Baron Arklow. This act conferred greater prestige upon him within the royal family and represented his mother's recognition of his role as an active member of the British aristocracy. Unlike his brothers, he could not perform military duties or hold a prominent political role, but the ducal title allowed him to solidify his position within the monarchical structure and ensured him greater independence. Through this appointment, Leopold acquired a status that granted him ceremonial responsibilities and allowed him to represent the crown at official events. This recognition reinforced his sense of identity and provided him with greater autonomy within the limits imposed by his fragile health. However, one fundamental issue in his life remained unresolved: his marriage. Given that his medical condition made it difficult to find a wife willing to accept the risks associated with his illness, his mother took the initiative to seek out a suitable match. Queen Victoria, always vigilant about her children's futures, considered it essential that Leopold marry, not only for personal reasons but also to ensure his stability and legacy within the royal family. Choosing a wife for the Duke of Albany was no simple task, as she needed to be a princess of appropriate lineage and willing to accept a husband whose health posed a challenge. Over the years, several candidates from European royal houses were considered, but it was not until contact was made with the princely family of Waldeck and Pyrmont that a suitable match was found. Finally, in 1882, Leopold married Princess Helena of Waldeck and Pyrmont in a solemn ceremony held at St. George's Chapel, Windsor Castle. This union not only strengthened the alliance between the British monarchy and the small German princely house but also marked a crucial step in the Duke of Albany's life. Despite initial doubts about his future as a husband and father due to his health, Leopold found in Helena a supportive companion willing to face the challenges posed by his illness. The wedding was a significant event within the British court, marked by the pomp and protocol characteristic of royal marriages at the time. Through this marriage, Leopold secured the continuation of his lineage, though his fate would still be overshadowed by the fragility of his health. In 1883, the Duke of Albany's life took a significant turn with the birth of his first daughter, Princess Alice of Albany. This event, celebrated with great joy within the British royal family, marked a moment of happiness for Leopold, who saw in his daughter the consolidation of his legacy despite the difficulties that had always surrounded his existence. Alice's arrival represented the possibility of establishing a strong family bond and ensuring the continuity of his lineage within the British monarchy. However, The joy of the birth was overshadowed by ongoing concerns about his delicate health. Although he tried to embrace his new responsibilities as a father with enthusiasm, his frail physical condition prevented him from engaging as freely as other princes of his rank. His wife, Princess Helena, played a crucial role in caring for their daughter, while Leopold sought to share moments with the child within the constraints imposed by his illness. Despite medical advancements of the time, his health continued to deteriorate, keeping him in a constant struggle between his desire for an active life and the limitations imposed by his condition. Hemophilia severely affected him, causing frequent internal bleeding and joint pain that hindered his mobility. Even minor injuries could trigger a severe crisis, requiring the royal family and his doctors to take strict precautions. This fragility deprived him of many activities he enjoyed, preventing him from fully participating in social and political life. Although his mind remained sharp and his interest in literature and politics did not wane, his body allowed him to do less and less. The medical restrictions and overprotection he had endured since childhood seemed justified with each new health crisis, reminding him that his existence was always in a delicate balance between stability and impending tragedy. In an attempt to alleviate his suffering and improve his well-being, Leopold decided to travel to Cannes, France, in March 1884. This destination, known for its mild climate and health benefits for those with chronic illnesses, had been recommended by his doctors as a refuge where he might find some relief from his ailments. Seeking a more favorable climate was not uncommon among the European aristocracy, and many royals traveled to the French Riviera in search of recovery. For Leopold, this journey represented a final hope to ease the ravages of his illness and enjoy a brief respite away from the pressures of the British court. During his stay in Cannes, he tried to maintain a relaxed lifestyle, taking advantage of the tranquil environment to read, write, and take walks as much as his health allowed. However, his condition remained unstable, and any accident could become a lethal threat. On March 27, 1884, fate dealt him one final, tragic blow. While at his residence in Cannes, he suffered a fall that would permanently alter the course of his life. In an unfortunate accident, the Duke of Albany struck his head forcefully against the ground, causing a cerebral hemorrhage. For a man with hemophilia, such an injury posed an imminent danger, as his blood could not clot properly. As the hours passed, the symptoms of the trauma became evident, and his health deteriorated rapidly. Despite efforts to stabilize him, the medicine of the time was incapable of offering an effective treatment for such a severe condition. The internal bleeding progressed uncontrollably, leaving him in a critical state from which there was no return. Finally, in the early hours of March 28, 1884, Prince Leopold, Duke of Albany, passed away at the age of 30. His death, though always feared by his family, came suddenly and heartbreakingly, depriving Queen Victoria of her most fragile son and the British people of a prince whose intelligence and sensitivity had set him apart. The news of his passing shocked the court and British society, for although it was always known that his life would be marked by illness, few expected his fate to be sealed so abruptly. His wife, Princess Helena, was left a widow just 2 years after their marriage, with a young daughter in her care and a second child on the way, as she was pregnant at the time of the tragedy. Leopold was remembered as a scholarly and cultured prince whose brief life left a mark on the history of the British monarchy and the study of hemophilia, the disease that would define his destiny and that of future generations within European royalty. Prince Leopold's death was a devastating blow to his mother, Queen Victoria, who had always maintained a particularly close and protective relationship with him. From his birth, he had been the child who caused her the greatest concern due to his fragile health, and his premature death only confirmed her deepest fears. The Queen, who had already endured the loss of her husband, Prince Albert, and several of her children and close relatives, described Leopold's passing as one of the greatest tragedies of her life. In her personal writings, she expressed profound grief, lamenting that she had not been able to be by his side in his final moments. To Victoria, Leopold was her most vulnerable son and also one of the most intelligent and sensitive, which made his loss even more painful. The Queen spent a long period in mourning, reflecting sorrowfully on the short but significant life of her son, whom she had always regarded as a prince with great intellectual and cultural potential. Following his death, preparations were made to transport Leopold's remains from Cannes to England. Given his position within the British royal family, he was granted funeral honors befitting his rank. His body was brought back to his homeland, where it was received with solemnity and respect. The funeral took place at St. George's Chapel in Windsor Castle, a site of great significance to the British monarchy. Present at the ceremony were Queen Victoria, his widow, Princess Helena, other members of the royal family, dignitaries, and prominent figures of British society. He was given military and religious honors, and the funeral service was marked by deep solemnity and grief. His remains were laid to rest in the royal crypt alongside other members of the family. Leopold's funeral symbolized the farewell to a prince whose life had been shaped by illness and the departure of a man who, despite his physical limitations, left a lasting impact on the cultural and political landscape of his time. A few months after his death, the royal family received bittersweet news. In July 1884, his widow, Princess Helena, gave birth to his posthumous son, Prince Charles Edward. This birth brought some comfort to the family, though it was overshadowed by the absence of the father. With the arrival of Charles Edward, the continuation of Leopold's lineage was ensured, which was of great importance to the monarchy. However, the child's future would be filled with challenges. As he grew up, Charles Edward was sent to Germany to assume his inheritance as Duke of Saxe-Coburg and Gotha, a title he inherited due to his family's dynastic ties. However, his life was deeply affected by the complex political relations of the time, particularly during World War I and World War II, which led to his being viewed with suspicion in Britain due to his connections with Germany. Nevertheless, his existence remained the last tangible link to his father, whose life had been cut tragically short. Meanwhile, Princess Helena of Waldeck and Pyrmont, Leopold's widow, faced the difficult task of raising their two children alone while keeping the memory of her husband alive. Despite her grief, Helena demonstrated great strength and dedicated herself to various charitable causes, following the tradition of many royal widows of the time. She became actively involved in philanthropic initiatives and worked to improve the welfare of the less fortunate, earning the respect of British society. Additionally, she ensured that both Alice and Charles Edward received a proper education, instilling in them the values their father had embodied during his life. Though she never remarried, Helena kept Leopold's memory alive through their children and her social work. Her role as a mother and benefactor was crucial in maintaining the stability of her family after the tragic loss of her husband. From a historical perspective, the life and death of Prince Leopold represent a key example of the impact of hemophilia on European royalty. His medical condition not only shaped his existence, limiting him in many ways, but also became a subject of study in the history of the British royal family and genetics. Leopold was one of the first members of the British royal family to be diagnosed with hemophilia, a disease that would later appear in several of Queen Victoria's descendants, affecting monarchies across Europe. His story also illustrates the struggle of a prince who, despite his illness, tried to leave his own mark on the intellectual, political, and cultural world. Although his life was brief, his legacy remains relevant in the study of royal history and in understanding how genetic diseases can influence politics and dynasties. And with that, we come to the end of the video. We hope you enjoyed it. If you have something to add, feel free to leave it in the comments section. Give us a like and share the link with all your friends and family so they can learn more about the life of Prince Leopold, Duke of Albany. Thank you for following us. And if you haven't subscribed yet, we invite you to do so and turn on the notification bell, as we regularly upload historical content that will surely interest you. See you in the next video.